What's going on, y'all? 5 Sports Talk back at it with another video talking some NBA, talking NBA free agency, and 2017 NBA free agency is going to be the free agency of one Chris Paul, who is the biggest name in free agency. Of course, Steph Curry is there, but we fully expect him to re-sign with the Warriors. I don't think anyone expects him to go anywhere. So with that being said, Chris Paul becomes the next biggest name. I know Blake Griffin is also still there, but it's sort of 1A, 1B. So Chris Paul is probably going to be the domino effect that affects where all the other free agents go. So where should Chris Paul go? Well, there's a team that, of course, he's been linked to a lot this offseason, the Spurs, okay? So I'll discuss that. And then, of course, will he stay with the Clippers? But I also have one team that's sort of flying under the radar that I think would be perfect for Chris Paul, and he should seriously consider them this summer. But first, let's start with the San Antonio Spurs. So everybody wants Chris Paul to go to the Spurs because Chris Paul needs to win a ring, and the Spurs are always perennial contenders. I get it, okay? Totally get it. But here's my thing, okay? I know the salary cap is going up. I know that, more so ever than now, Chris Paul has gotten that pressure from people to win a ring. But how are you going to fit Chris Paul in the payroll if you're the San Antonio Spurs? You literally have to gut the entire roster, okay? Literally gut the entire roster. I'm talking about you have to trade Pau Gasol, and he's got a player option. So if he accepts that player option, you got to trade him as a salary dump. You got to trade Tony Parker. I hope Manu Ginobili retires. And basically, the roster would literally be nothing but Kawhi Leonard and Greg Popovich. I don't even know if you can afford LaMarcus Aldridge. So, really, to me, these rumors, and I get it, the Spurs have shown interest apparently, and Chris Paul is apparently interested. I'll tell you the real reason why I think these rumors are popping up. I think Chris Paul's agent has been talking to the Clippers to get him to re-sign with the Clippers, but the Clippers don't want to offer Chris Paul a max at age 32, which is going to be about 5 years, $210 million, and he'll be the first NBA player with the new salary cap going up and the $200 million contracts coming up to be able to get that offered and accepted. And they see Chris Paul is at the back end of his prime, and I don't know if Clippers, and I'm just speculating here, want to commit all those dollars. So this might be a bluff play from Chris Paul's agent to say, hey, look, we're getting all this interest from the Spurs, so if you don't get your you-know-what together, we might sign with the San Antonio Spurs. That is what I think. I think it is a smokescreen. Like I said, if you can show me how Chris Paul fits under the roster without them completely gutting the roster around him, then I might be inclined to agree with you and maybe look at that. But then what is the point? Because if you gut the roster, they are no longer a contender. And that is the entire purpose of Chris Paul being with the San Antonio Spurs. Now let's talk about that under the radar team, okay? This is a team a lot of people haven't been paying attention to, and trust me, I have gone through the list of all of the teams in the East and the West, and I feel like this team has the most potential with a Chris Paul at the helm. He is exactly what I feel like that team needs, and I'm talking about none other than the New Orleans Pelicans, who now have a two-headed monster in Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins. Just imagine Chris Paul sliding in at point guard, which is perfect because Jrue Holiday is a free agent this year, so that starting point guard spot is open. Chris Paul comes in, and DeMarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis are going to get so many buckets effortlessly from Chris Paul, and just the attention they command. Now, Chris Paul had two good big men in LA, but he had Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan. DeAndre Jordan has absolutely no offensive game. Blake Griffin has a good offensive game, but you can make the argument both Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins are better than Blake. So you're getting an upgrade at both spots, at power forward and center, and these guys are interchangeable. They can hit the three. They're virtually unstoppable offensively. And you pair that with a Chris Paul, now you have your own big three, and now you have a team which is the antithesis of what the Warriors are, which is small ball, spread the ball out, play with shooters and whatnot. And now who's going to guard DeMarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis on the Warriors. Okay, Draymond Green, you can only guard one of them. Zaza Pachulia, JaVale McGee, please. Okay, so this fit, and I know the Pelicans struggled last year at the back end when they traded for DeMarcus, but that was only because they're trying to gel right now. And I feel like a full off season together, I feel like with if Chris Paul were to come there, learning the whole playbook and everything, and DeMarcus Cousins is a head case, but after doing all of that, I think chemistry is going to come sooner rather than later, and that's why I think that's a perfect fit. Now, let's talk salary-wise. I think Pelicans have about $80-85 million in salary cap, somewhere between there. And with the cap going up, they will be able to offer Chris Paul a comparable deal that other teams can offer. Now, no one, and I mean no one, can top what the Clippers can offer Chris Paul, which is, what, 5 years, $210 million? But another team can offer Chris Paul 4 years on $150-60 million. So that's the thing. And if the Pelicans are sharp enough and are able to maneuver a way around it, maybe Chris Paul can convince his buddy JJ Redick to come on over. Now you get a couple shooters, and that's the beauty of this situation, because you got Chris Paul, Cousins, and AD. You just need shooters around them, and that is perfect. 3-and-D guys, okay? That's all you need. You don't even need another scorer and whatnot, because there's enough guys to put the ball in the basket, and that would be perfect for Chris Paul. So this situation, to me, would be ideal for Chris. Do I think he would go back to New Orleans? I'm skeptical. Like I said, but if you were to look at the situation and look at the teams that would give him the best shot to win, Spurs having to gut their roster versus him staying with the Clippers versus him going to the Pelicans and getting AD and DeMarcus, there's a very, very good chance AD and DeMarcus would be the best talent he could surround himself with. Now, what do I think ultimately ends up happening? I think Chris Paul stays with the Clippers, okay? And I'd only say that because to me, it makes entirely too much sense for him to not stay, and that's because first and foremost, the money. You get $150 million 4 years versus $200 million 5 years, $210. He would be the first player to get this new contract. I think that's big for Chris Paul, and at 32 years old, this might be his last big deal. So that is first and foremost. Second, the Clippers, LA. I mean, LA is still LA. I know Lakers haven't been able to attract free agents, but I feel like the Clippers are still a good destination for teams versus other markets out there, like a small market or something. I think Chris Paul likes LA. And then even if you think the Clippers are cursed, they get hurt too much, they're injured too much, whatever the case may be, when they are fully healthy, this roster, it is somewhat of a contender. Now, I'm not going to say they are a total, complete championship contender, because we only know that there are two teams, or we already know that there are two teams that are the real contenders, and that is, of course, the teams in the finals, the Cavs and the Warriors. Everyone else is basically just watching. But the Clippers have a comparable roster. They have a very, very good roster. And assuming they're able to re-sign everyone, which is Blake, JJ, and CP3 himself, this would give him the best shot probably at a title if he stayed, if they all came together. The Pelicans would also give him a good shot, but they're, like I said, a bit of an unknown, and depending on if they can surround him with shooters as well. But like I said, you take the money, you take the team, and you take what Chris Paul values. Even if he wants to win championships, he can see that the Clippers, at this point, are the closest. Pelicans have more potential. Spurs would have to gut their roster, but the Clippers right now would be the closest, so I think he stays. But like I said, Pelicans would be a great, great move for Chris Paul. Let me know what you guys think about Chris Paul. Where does he go? Where does he end up? Leave a comment down below. And as always, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.